So my last video in what could end up being a 3-part series at this point was me unboxing and taking a look at these titanium components made for the Planetary Freecoasters that are out there. In that video I said I'm not gonna, put them on here and check things out yet. So here we are in this video where we're gonna be weighing these parts in comparison and seeing how much you can expect to save in weight by getting these components. So I guess before we actually take anything off of this hub, we should get a base weight for it. So let's go ahead and turn on the scale here and put the hub on here. Oh, overload. Not gonna lie, I knew that was gonna happen. So this scale tops out at I think 17 or 18 ounces. And so that means this hub isn't even able to be weighed by this scale with everything on it. So what we have to do is we have to start taking parts off. So first thing we're gonna do is take off one axle nut. And immediately that makes it so that it can be weighed on here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take both axle nuts off and we'll get the weight without the axle nuts at all. And then we'll be able to compare the weights of the axle nuts in tie. So these are obviously chromoly axle nuts. There are aluminum ones out there. I wouldn't recommend using those on a freestyle bike unless you don't use pegs and you're confident in them. So let's see here, 16.9 we'll just say. 16.9 hub with the washers on the axle. What do we get if we weigh just axle nuts? 1.43. 1.43 ounces. 0.8, so we are saving half an ounce essentially, 6.6, so a little bit more than half an ounce. 0.8 to 1.43, so a little bit more than half an ounce on axle nuts alone. So let's take these washers off, we're going to use those later. And now we can take off the drive side jam nut to see how much weight we're saving with that. This is also chromoly. This side is aluminum, and aluminum is lighter than titanium, so that's probably why they didn't go ahead and make one for the non-drive side. So how much does this one weigh? 0.7, yeah, 0.7 we'll say. 0.7 or 0.69, nice. So this is 0.38, it's almost half the weight. We're saving 0.3 ounces. So next at this point is the driver, and I kind of just now realized that I can't get an accurate comparison of weight between the two drivers when this one that's chromoly has all of the bearings, pawls, and springs in it, and this one has nothing in it. So we either need to take everything out of this one or put everything into the titanium one. Lucky for me, I've already taken everything out of a different driver so that I could prep for this video and have all of the bearings ready. So all I really need to do is take the rubber seal off, and now we have two identical drivers, one made of titanium and one made of chromoly. Now let's see the comparison in weight. Chromoly is 2.12, titanium 1.22. So once again, almost an entire ounce. What about the axle? Well, for the axle, we're gonna actually have to take this axle out of this hub in order to get an accurate weight here. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Pretend you didn't see that later. And we can go ahead and strip the hardware off of this axle. Set it over there, clutch aside. Now take off this jam nut, which I already mentioned. This one is aluminum, so it would make sense that they wouldn't make this one out of titanium, just being that aluminum is lighter than titanium, so you wouldn't get any weight savings there. But here we have the normal axle that comes with this that is chromoly, and it has a 6mm hole all the way through it. It's broached for 6mm. This one's also broached. Oh my gosh, it's definitely lighter. I'm so excited about all of this. Too much fun to compare these things. 6.13 or 6.14, 4.25. So this is almost 2 ounces in itself. Man, like I already said in the last video, I'm not the kind of person who cares a lot about weight, but this stuff is just cool and fascinating to me. A solid titanium axle weighs almost 2 ounces less than a hollow chromoly one. That is wild to me. So at this point, if you've been following along with the numbers and the math, you already easily figured out how much lighter these titanium components are than the chromoly counterparts that come with these hubs. But where's the fun in that? You know, chucking everything onto the scale and immediately knowing the numbers. Let's make it more fun and go ahead and put the hub shell together with the titanium parts and then weigh it to compare against that original number we had earlier, which was 16.89, I'm pretty sure. So let's grab the titanium axle and our bearing, and we're gonna go ahead and put the bearing onto the axle. There we go. And I had to do it a little bit off camera because I had to push on it like this, and you already saw it. So now that we got that on there, let's take our aluminum jam nut for the non-drive side. Go ahead and thread it all the way on. Make sure it's snugged up a bit, and that actually helps put that bearing onto there better. So that is on there and solid, and that can just go ahead and go into our hub shell just like this, and then that will slide into the hub shell just like that. These are precisely machined parts. So at this point, we have all of that ready. We can go ahead and grab our clutch and put the clutch onto the axle and put it into the hub, rotating it until it seats itself into the hub shell where it's supposed to go. Looks like it's in there. And now we go ahead and put together this driver. So first thing, I'm going to take the O-ring here and place it on. And then we grab all of our other components of the driver so we can go ahead and put all of the bearings and everything together the way that it needs to be done. So these smaller sized bearings actually go on the outside part of the driver, and it probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of grease in between these, especially being that these are steel bearings in a titanium driver. We're talking about literally just enough to coat the outer part of the bearing, and then it goes into this outer part of the driver, which is pretty clear because it's the only one that will fit in that part of the driver. Okay, so that one is in. Now, in order to get it all the way into the driver, I'm going to actually use the old axle, and I guess I have to hold it because it doesn't work like that. But if we tap on the axle, which if we're being smart about this, we really should put a axle nut onto it. Okay, so that pushed it in there far enough that I think we'll be able to get the other one in. Grab a little bit more poly lube, put it on the outside of the bearing. I'll be honest, I don't know if this is what you're supposed to do in this situation because I've never changed out driver bearings before, but I'm gonna say it's probably not a bad idea. So now we can go back to first tighten of the axle will definitely get all of that taken care of. But we've got it pretty close, as you can see. So the next thing we need is this little spacer. This little spacer goes between these bearings on the outside of the driver, and then there's a different sized bearing that is a little bit thicker that goes on the inside of the driver, and I will do a dedicated video on how to rebuild a driver soon, because I learned the hard way how to take bearings out today. Have to get some new bearings for a driver, or at least a new one of these, because I ruined one, and I'm really lucky that I had others laying around. But we got this one poly-lubed. Now, we can go ahead and tap this one in. There we go. So when we put everything together and tighten it, this will compress and put all of our bearings as tight as they need to be, because you can hear that spacer in there right now. But that is the driver other than the pawls and springs. We're gonna zoom in a little bit here, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a good job of explaining the pawls and springs in case you ever need to take these things apart. So if you are a right side drive, your pawls go on the right side. If you're left side drive, your pawls go on the left side. So we go ahead and we take our spring, and you can notice that it has a little nub sticking off that side and a normal amount of spring sticking off this side. If we are right side drive, we're putting this spring on the left side, and we're putting it so that this part is sticking out right here just like that, and only pushing it to where this end is touching the driver. Then we rotate so that it's got spring tension, and then push it the rest of the way into the driver. Now, if you have fingernails a little bit like I do, you can do this. It gives you your tension, and then we can put our pawl in with these lines in the cavity facing upward. Put it into the driver like that. Let go of our spring. It goes into that cavity, and now our pawl springs downward the way that it's supposed to with a planetary hub. So that's how that works. We'll go ahead and repeat. We take our spring, we find the little piece that's sticking out, put it into our driver with that part just facing up right there. It needs to catch this lip so that it keeps the spring in place. You spring the other end around so that it goes into the slot. Then you grab your pawl, you grab your spring if you can. If not, you might have to use a screwdriver or something. Put your pawl in, then let your spring go, and it goes into that cavity and allows it to spring downward. Exact same thing onto the other one. So here we go with that. Same process all the way through with all three of them. And then you have, once you get all three pawls in, you'll have a completed driver. So there is that. And I suppose since we have two finished drivers here now, and we've already weighed the difference between the driver with no bearings in it and no pawls and springs, let's just go ahead and, for fun, get the difference between them fully built. So we've got 3.32 of the chromoly, and then the titanium is 2.41, so about an ounce of difference. You can definitely feel the difference in the hand. But now at this point, scale aside for a second, we can take our finished titanium driver, slide it into the hub, and just like that, we have it. And if you put it all together right, your driver will engage when you go forward with the correct drive side. So now we can go ahead and take our titanium jam nut and put it onto there with this collar facing outwards. And I just realized I'm still in 2X. Hopefully putting the driver in wasn't too zoomed in for you guys there. Sorry about that. So get this onto here, and now it's the process of tightening this up on the hub that will push everything together the way that it needs to be tightened. So if I grab my Allen wrench and I put it into the 6mm broach, and then I grab my crescent wrench and tighten it on here, we tighten this, it will be simultaneously pulling the non-drive side bearing into the hub, while also, once that gets all the way tightened, pulling and finishing tightening the driver bearings together. If you have a press, that would be more ideal, but if you don't have a press, you're kind of creating a press by doing it this way, and it works. So there's that. Now we tighten this up. Okay. And I believe that that should have done it, so I'm gonna go ahead and back this off and just double check. And I think one thing I'm gonna do too before I finish this process up is I'm gonna go ahead and grease the axle where anything comes in contact with it as far as threads go, because I don't want anything to seize up. But just to double check here, let's go ahead and get our axle back, or driver back out. Pull our driver back out, and as you can see, the bearing has seated itself further into the driver, which, if we compare to this one, is exactly where it's supposed to be. And I just learned something important in this process. When I pulled this out, the pawls looked like they were sticking out a little bit. That was because the springs weren't fully pushed in just now. So you want to make sure that when you do this, you have your springs all the way pushed in, because that's where they're supposed to sit to make this work correctly. So now we can go ahead and put that back on. Looks good. Put our jam nut back on. Might as well put the poly lube on here just to be safe with this. Titanium on titanium, it can seize, and you want to use tie prep too. Usually in these circumstances, and I'm sure all of my Thai friends will yell at me if I don't mean Thai friends as in the people from Thailand either. I mean people who like titanium parts. I'm sure they will all yell at me for doing it wrong if I am. So at this point, all we need to compare our original weight of the hub without the axle nuts, because it was too heavy, is the washers. It was 16.89. 896 or 897, so you could say 16.9. And now let's weigh it. 13.79. So we are saving almost exactly 3 ounces, not even including the savings from the axle nuts. We can literally put our axle nuts onto the scale this time. 14.59 ounces is how much this hub weighs with all titanium components, not even considering the fact that they also make a hollow version of this axle, so it would make it that much lighter yet. Pretty freaking cool. And honestly, I just think it looks sweet with the titanium components in it. Don't you think? I think it looks really awesome. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be taking all of these components out to put them into the one that's on my bike. So I think that's going to be part 3 in this saga. I hope you guys have found this fun so far. It's been so cool to see just how much weight you can save with this. And I think it's like right around 4 ounces. Once again, huge, massive thank you to Wheelhouse 41 in Thailand for sending these parts out to make a video on them. Watch the original unboxing video if you want to hear the full story behind the titanium parts and behind Wheelhouse as a company. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this one enough that you'll stay tuned for part 3, where we put it onto my current bike that I'm riding and then weigh the difference between the bike before and after. Thanks for watching. Check out Wheelhouse, get some of these parts, We'll see you tomorrow for another one. Goodbye.